What goes around comes around, sometimes in the form of a frisbee, sometimes as a haunting nightmare, and sometimes in the form of a long, long bill. The Queen of Britain will soon receive one. It will be from Jamaica. The Caribbean country is asking the British Queen to cough up billions. What for? As reparations for slavery. Quick background. Jamaica was a British colony from 1655 to 1962. The colonizer introduced sugarcane cultivation in Jamaica, and to support it, Britain introduced slaves. People were stolen from their homes and forced to work in the field. Many were shipped across to other countries as part of the transatlantic slave trade. In 1662, there were 400 slaves in Jamaica. By 1734, the number became 86,000. Between 1702 and 1749, nearly 300,000 slaves were imported to Jamaica. More than 100,000 were exported. It was only in the year 1807 that the British Parliament abolished slave trade, and it abolished slavery in 1837. By then, Britain had abducted and enslaved at least 12.5 million people. 12.5 million people enslaved. Many of them were Jamaicans. In 1833, Britain paid off 46,000 British slave owners. They were given £20 million, almost 40% of that time's annual budget. What was this money for? To compensate for the quote-unquote loss of human property. What about these human properties themselves? What did the government give them? Forget compensation. Did Imperial Britain even offer an apology to the slaves and their families? The legacy of the slave trade still stings Jamaica. The country has been asking for justice for some time now. In 2015, then British Prime Minister David Cameron visited Jamaica. Jamaican leaders asked his government to pay reparations. Cameron was told to atone for the historical sin. The Prime Minister refused to even offer an apology. Here's what he said instead. David Cameron told Jamaica to move on. Reports published around that time revealed why he may have been so anti-reparation. Turns out one of Cameron's own family members was among many slave owners to have received compensation for loss of slaves. Jamaica did not give up its fight for justice, though. The Culture Minister recently said, and I'm quoting, "We are especially pleased to announce that we have made further steps in our strides towards seeking reparatory justice for the victims and descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. The petition is being presented to the Queen of the UK and or the government of the UK." Now, we don't know how much Jamaica is asking for exactly, but here's what we can tell you. Britain has a history of denying reparation. In 2014, a coalition of 15 Caribbean countries presented a compensation plan to the UK. They wanted reparation for slave trade. A YouGov survey at that time found that 46% of the respondents in the UK opposed reparations. What about the government? The Foreign and Commonwealth Office said reparations are, quote-unquote, not the answer for the legacy of slave trade. May I then ask, what is? What's the answer for the legacy of slave trade? After the Second World War, Germany was made to compensate for the damages. In the years since, several companies have had to cough up money for oil spills, for nuclear power plant leaks, for gas leaks, for accidents. And here we are talking about millions of people being abducted and enslaved, but Britain refuses to atone for its inhumanity. And FYI, reparations for transatlantic slave trade could add up to $14 trillion. Of course, the UK refuses to pay. Just like it refuses to return stolen goods, be it India's Kohinoor or Ethiopia's manuscripts. Treasures from British colonies decorate the crown and its properties today. They hang on the walls of its museums and palaces, and the UK sees nothing wrong with any of this. It feels no shame or the moral obligation to at least be apologetic, to at least apologize for its historic plunders. Today, Jamaica is setting a trend. It is asking for compensation for historical wrongs. Compensation it is entitled to. Compensation that 54 Commonwealth nations are also entitled to. The Great Britain ruled them all, looted them all. You see, the British Empire was the largest the world has ever seen. It ruled over parts of Africa, Asia, America, Australia, and New Zealand. It squeezed all of them. From Africa, it abducted, trafficked, and enslaved people. stole Benin bronzes. From Greece, it stole Elgin marbles. From Ethiopia, manuscripts. And from India, it drained $45 trillion. It is time for reparation. And while the world comes together to make China pay, it must not forget to also demand accountability from the British Crown.